Story 1. I was driving home late one night in Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. It was past midnight, and the road was empty, just the way I like it. As I listened to my usual podcast, my car alerted me that I was low on gas. I quickly found the nearest gas station on my Maps app and headed there. About 5 minutes later, I arrived at a generic, no-name gas station. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed a man filling up his old pickup truck. I went inside, bought a coffee, and paid for my gas in cash. When I came back out, the man was getting into his truck and driving away. After filling up, I got back in my car and continued my drive. Shortly after leaving the station, I spotted the same pickup truck parked on the grass by the woods, turned off. Curious, I kept an eye on it through my rearview mirror, but it remained still. As I drove, my car alerted me again, this time that I had a flat tire on the rear driver's side. Perplexed, since I hadn't hit anything, I considered the possibility that the man at the gas station had slashed it. Concerned, I reached for my phone to call for roadside assistance. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a car or truck approaching from behind me, but I couldn't see any headlights. The engine sound then stopped, and it was quiet again. Worried, I grabbed the SOS flashlight my dad had given me and shone it down the road. To my surprise, I saw the reflection of a truck's headlights pulled over about 200 feet away. It looked like the same pickup truck from the gas station. As alarmed, I quickly ran into the woods, hiding behind a large bush and tree. I called 911, whispering my location and explaining that I believed the man who had slashed my tire was now following me. The 911 operator asked me several questions, including if I could see if the man was armed. Just then, I heard the truck door open and close, and the man called out, asking if I needed help. I knew better than to respond, and the call with the 911 operator suddenly disconnected due to poor cell reception. As I waited in the woods, hoping the 911 operator would call back, I heard the sound of another passing car on the road. It was slowing down, and I saw the man from the pickup truck talking to the driver of another truck in the middle of the road. I overheard the creepy man coming up with a fake explanation for his presence. At that moment, I rushed into the road, yelling for help and telling the men that the creepy man had slashed my tire and followed me. The man in the other truck looked at the creepy man with a disturbed expression, and the creepy man quickly denied any wrongdoing and hurried back to his pickup truck, driving off. The man in the other truck offered me a ride into town. And just then, a police car with its lights on pulled up. The officer took my information and said he would go to the gas station to check the camera footage. While I waited for the roadside assistance company, the officer stayed with me, and the tow truck driver eventually gave me a ride to a shop where my dad picked me up. Unfortunately, I never heard back from the police officer, so I don't know if they found any evidence on the gas station's camera footage. The experience left me shaken, as I had narrowly avoided what could have been a dangerous situation. Story 2. It was a scary night for me, something I still remember vividly. I'm 28 years old and my boyfriend Todd lives in another state. We take turns visiting each other, but I usually go to him more because he has his own place, and I live with my sister. I was on my way to see Todd for a week during my winter break from teaching. I was driving my 2009 Hyundai Sonata, which I got for my sister. As I drove north, the snow on the ground increased, and I had to be careful since my car wasn't good in the snow. It was late, and the snow was getting heavier, with warnings of a blizzard. Todd and I thought it was best to try to beat the blizzard that night, instead of waiting for the next day when the roads would be covered in snow. Needing a place to stay, I stopped at a small diner for a sandwich and coffee. The waitress warned me not to continue my journey as the roads were getting dangerous. While finishing my meal, a man named Toby at the bar suggested a nearby motel, saying it was nice and cheap. He had heard my conversation with the waitress, which I found strange since he seemed to be there just to drink. I told Toby my name was Michelle and didn't feel like talking much. I looked out at the snow until the waitress brought my bill. Leaving the diner, There was already an inch of snow. Following Toby's advice, I drove slowly to the nearby motel, a simple place that suited my need for a quick overnight stay. After paying around $50 for a room at the motel, the man at the front desk gave me a key to a downstairs room. The room was small and simple, with a queen bed and red carpet, but it would work for the night. Unable to get a cell signal, I tried to video call my boyfriend Todd, but the connection was poor due to the lack of reception. However, the motel had Wi-Fi, so I went back out to the front desk to get the password. On my way, I noticed a new car in the parking lot with someone inside, but I didn't have time to look into it further. The front desk worker gave me the Wi-Fi info, and I was able to connect after a minute. Back in my room, I locked the door and tried to video call Todd again, but the connection was still terrible. We switched to texting instead. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the bathroom. I leaned forward and noticed the door was closed, though I couldn't remember if I had left it that way. I texted Todd, worried there might be an intruder. Todd told me to check if the door locked automatically when closed and to bring the key with me. As I opened the door, I was shocked to see footprints leading from a car in the parking lot to my room. The car was now empty. Terrified, I ran to the front desk and told the employee there was an intruder. Instead of calling the police, the worker called someone in another language. To my horror, the man I had seen at the diner, Toby, came out of my room and drove away. The front desk worker's associate, a large man who didn't speak English, arrived shortly after. The worker offered me a different room, but I didn't feel any safer. The next morning, the roads were somewhat cleared, allowing me to continue my journey to Todd's place. I was deeply unsettled by the motel worker's reluctance to call the police, likely to avoid any issues for the establishment. Later, I called the diner to warn them about Toby, as I no longer trusted strangers after this terrifying experience. Story 3. I was living in New York at the time, but I had 2 job interviews lined up in North Carolina. Instead of flying, I decided to drive down there to save some money. My current job wasn't satisfying me, so these new opportunities could be a fresh start with great benefits and salaries. Plus, the weather would be much better than in New York. I set off on a long 8-hour drive on a Thursday night, as the interviews were scheduled for the following Friday. I had to leave work as soon as I could, so I quickly grabbed my things, said goodbye to my family, and hit the road. I was aiming to arrive around 2 a.m., and I stopped for coffee a few times to stay awake during the drive. But as the night went on, the caffeine started to wear off, and I was getting really sleepy. Suddenly, on the side of the highway, I saw a man in a suit just standing there, not moving at all. As I passed him, I saw his face turn to watch my car go by, and I couldn't help but say out loud, "What the heck?" It was such a bizarre sight. Just 10 minutes later, I saw another man in a suit standing on the side of the road. I started to feel really uneasy about this, so I decided to pull over and see if I could help. According to my calculations, there was about one of these well-dressed men every 10 minutes along the highway. I couldn't understand what was going on. As I pulled over, I glanced in the rearview mirror, and the man had completely disappeared. Feeling unsettled, I stepped on the gas and continued my journey. I stopped for another coffee, but even in the rest area parking lot, I spotted the same man in a suit standing under a light post. This time, I looked at the man more closely. He seemed to be a middle-aged white man with short dark hair, clean-shaven, and with a neutral expression. The way he was staring at my car made me feel very uneasy. Without hesitation, I drove away, not even looking back. I was feeling more and more tired, and the coffee wasn't helping anymore. I knew I couldn't keep driving, so I pulled off the highway and parked in a random lot. I leaned my seat back and tried to rest, even though I felt scared in the empty parking lot. Just as I was starting to fall asleep, something startled me awake, and I was afraid the man in the suit would be there. My mind was playing tricks on me, making me worried that the man was around. I even thought I saw him in the backseat when I looked in the rearview mirror, which made me scream and jump out of the car in panic. But when I calmed down, I realized there was no one there. It was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. Even though I was shaken up, I got back in the car, finished my coffee, and kept driving. When I finally reached the hotel, I collapsed into the bed and fell asleep right away. The next day, even though I hadn't slept much, I felt a bit better for my first interview at 11 a.m. But when I saw the interviewer, who looked a lot like the man in the suit, it threw me off completely. I was nervous and distracted during the whole interview because of this. Despite the rough start, I did a great job with my second interviewer, a woman, and I ended up getting the job. I now live and work in North Carolina. Looking back, my therapist said the hallucinations were caused by the stress and lack of sleep. It taught me important lessons about managing stress and taking care of my mental health during difficult times.